Hi, everybody. Welcome to Celebrating Mass Effect, revisiting the beloved sci-fi trilogy, The Panel. We are so excited today because we have three absolutely amazing devs who have worked on one of the biggest projects to come out of BioWare in quite a while, as they decided not to remaster one, but three games all at once. So I'd love to welcome them, talk a little bit about what that entails, as well as show off a little bit of what 4K Ultra HD Mass Effect looks like. But I'd love to get you all to introduce yourselves first. So let's start with Crystal.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm a producer on the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I've been with BioWare for about 5 years now. I came in from film and television into video games. And so I've been working in, the media industry in Alberta for about 20 years. And I love working with this team, and the trilogy has been an awesome project to be on.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. You're both sides of ESIO. All right. And Kevin?
Yeah, hi, my name's Kevin. I'm the character and environment director on the Legendary Edition, which basically just means I help, make sure that all the artists who are working with 3D stuff and actually in the engine, they're able to do, their best work and it's all organized. And I liaise a lot with people like Mel and Crystal and make sure production's, up to date with what we're doing as well. I've been at BioWare for just over 5 years now as well. In the industry for probably just over 13. Came from a pretty long stint in Vancouver, and then I jumped to a smaller studio in Edmonton, and then on to BioWare here in Edmonton for the last 5 or so.
Very exciting. And Melanie?
So I'm Melanie Faulknor. I'm a producer at BioWare as well, and I was lead producer on the Legendary Edition. I've been at BioWare now for 11 years, and I came into the studio at Mass Effect 3. And BioWare is the only studio I've worked at, so I've been in the industry for as long as I've been at BioWare.
Amazing. And thank you for making time with us. I know you're currently on mat leave, so we really appreciate you taking time to be with us today. But I got to start with the biggest question of all. Why a remaster versus a remake? And we'll probably start with Melanie, as you seem to maybe have an idea of why that was.
So, yeah, Mass Effect is personal. It's not like a lot of other game franchises. You are creating Shepard as you go. You don't just create what your Shepard looks like. You are making choices and having reactions that affect gameplay throughout the entire trilogy. So when you're looking at a remake and thinking about changes, that affects what players have as their Shepard experience. And so we didn't want to do that. And so remaster, you're taking that nostalgia that players had with their Shepard that they know and love, and just taking that up to the next level or several levels depending on what part of the game we were touching. And then it can also bring that original experience to a new generation.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear. You know, not having the story change and having that really relatable part for a lot of people will be fantastic to hear. But with massive, massive upgrades to visuals, like we're up to 4K Ultra HD, how do you even start the process of modernizing a game like the original Mass Effect? And maybe that's a Kevin question, or feel free for anybody to jump in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think with the remaster, Mel touched on it really well. It gives us a chance to polish what's there rather than having to start fresh. So we really kind of went into this process almost like you would as like a live development, but you get to the end of a project and you get this just wonderful all team meeting where the game director comes up and says, okay, by the way, you guys, you have another 10 months and consoles are way more powerful than you expected they were going to be. Go back and make your stuff everything you want it to be. And like that's just this, like, as an artist, a dream scenario that would never happen, right? It's just polish and you don't care about expensive stuff quite as much and just throw it in there. But that being said, like, it's been sitting on a server collecting dust for 15 years, especially Mass Effect 1. And there's a few things we knew we needed to do right off the bat. It's a monumental amount of work just to stand up the game in the first place again. So, just like any project, you have to start with the foundation. You have to get the game compiling again. You have to, we knew we wanted to update Unreal 3, which is the engine that we're still using. We wanted to update that to the latest version of Unreal 3 that was going to support our games. There had been a lot of development over the course of the trilogy on the engine itself, so we knew Mass Effect 3 had a lot of engine features that we wanted to use on Mass Effect 1. So there was a lot of work just to stand up and get the game compiled and get the game playing. And then additionally, as artists, there's no reason to go in yet and start making individual assets look better if we haven't done like the bulk upres of all the textures. Like we knew we needed to do, every texture in the game needed to get increased in resolution to support, 4K displays, and people's expectations of just like how good the textures are going to look. So we did all those like automated bulk processes on tens of thousands of textures, while the game was starting to get stood up. And then at the same time, it's just kind of lined up pretty well with like the game's playable now. Let's release the artists in there. We have a better idea now of like how many assets that exist, how many do we want to touch, what is the pipeline to actually go through and do that. So like we had VFX artists, UI artists, environment artists, character artists, everyone in there was tech animators and everything. They're all figuring out the pipelines again, whether they worked on the entire trilogy, or if they're like me and this is their first time touching the trilogy. It's amazing how fast it just leaves your brain. Like if you had worked on the trilogy, it's like, how do I even open up the level again? Like people were just like just learning their way around the tools. And then tools wise as well, there's a ton of work there too to just like get the tools working with modern day Max and Maya, and like how do you even go about finding a license for Mudbox version 1.7 that was last released in 2006 or something, right? Like, and like the files only open on that. So there's a ton of work there just to get going. But beyond that, it does just become, art, and you just get to start polishing art and going through your assets and making everything look better. So it was nice to get through that initial stand-up phase and just getting into polish.
Yeah, I can imagine the let's dust this off the shelf feeling is always a little bit intimidating to see if things even run to the same way that they would. But remastering one game, a lot of work. Remastering 3, probably a little bit more. Did you folks want to tell us about why you would choose to do all 3 and kind of how that worked? And maybe we'll start with Crystal, but maybe everybody can kind of pitch in on that one.
Yeah, sure. So, we consider it a trilogy. It is, the Mass Effect trilogy with all 3 games. We have over 40 DLC if you include all of the DLC, the packs, the armor. And so we wanted to make sure that if you have those games, that's all included in the Legendary Edition. So that was definitely just a given, I think, at the start, that we wouldn't want to do just one. We have to give the whole trilogy a stand up. So that's where we started.
Yeah, and Melanie, like you were saying, that kind of addition of your ship, right? Making sure that your Commander Shepard kind of flows through. Was that one of the other motivations to really do the whole thing all at once rather than spacing it out?
Yeah, just giving, well, especially for new players too, like giving everybody the whole experience. Like Crystal said, we've always seen it as a unit, as a trilogy, and so making sure that everybody just has all the things all at once, it made the most sense. But yeah, looking at the looking at the scale of it, which I mean Kevin can talk more to that, it was just it's a lot. It was a lot, thousands and thousands and thousands of assets when we really started pulling it apart. Because yeah, it's a great idea. We knew what we wanted to do it, but yeah, when you actually break it down, it's a lot.
Definitely. And, just within the trilogy itself, like this is a massive universe that has been developed that has all of these stories and lore and just an amazing scope and scale, really, that it's been developed. So, how do you manage something like that with the breadth of the trilogy of Mass Effect, that you have to deal with this entire established universe? And maybe that's to Kevin.
Yeah, I guess initially at least, like you definitely cannot underestimate how wide these games are and complex they are. Any single one of them by themselves is, it's a 40+ hour game with diverging paths and um, systems that interact with each other at very fundamental levels all the way through, like the economy and everything. Like these games have it all, and then you expand that out to times 3 plus all the DLC, and it is a lot. It's an organizational undertaking, and our production staff is obviously on top of it the whole way through. But for us, it gives us a lot of opportunities as well because of tackling all three at once and the breadth of everything. We're able to see and step back and take a bigger picture approach to a lot of the stuff, like upgrades that we did to the character customization. For one, is that's one of those systems that you wouldn't have been able to really push in the vacuum of one of the games at once. But when you step back and you see all three and you see, okay, well, how did the character customization change between the three games? What systems do we want to take back from 3 into 2 into 1, or even upwards from 1 into 2 into 3? Sometimes like you lost some of your options. Unify some of the lighting on the character creators, things like that. That really allows us as artists and developers to make a more consistent experience overall. And then as far as like keeping a handle on everything, we just play the game every afternoon. We have multi-hour long play sessions. We have a ton of QA pouring their way through the games constantly, fixing bugs. So yeah, I mean, the other half of your story, I think I'll probably, or a question I'll probably throw straight to Mel, as far as like the stories within that universe and the breadth of their their reach.
Yeah, I feel like Melanie can definitely kind of round that out, and her lead producer role of wrangling cats is what they normally say.
Yeah, I guess, and I mean that the story itself, because we didn't touch a lot as far as the Legendary Edition goes. The story, if you mean for the original trilogy, it's such a machine. The narrative process is such a machine. I could talk forever about that, but to keep it short, I guess, just starting with the writer, in order to keep things familiar and consistent, we'll give like one writer owns a squad mate, and so one writer will do that plot in order to make sure that the voice is consistent throughout. And then when that squad mate appears in other parts of the game, writers are doing voice passes, to make sure everything sounds familiar, and so it just always sounds like that character to the player. But then, of course, once everything is written, then that goes out into the next part of the machine, because in order to produce a story like that, you have so many moving parts. The writing is the beginning, and then it moves to voiceover and performance capture, cinematics, animation, level art, level design. Like, there's just a huge amount of people and content creators that it has to hit before it becomes the full story. And of course, there's production throughout all that, just making sure that all the pipelines are connected and everybody's getting things when they need it. And so, that obviously can take years, depending on what our release is, if it's DLC or if it's a full game. And I didn't fully appreciate the scale of it until I was working on Genesis 2 for the Wii U. So we kind of had to summarize Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2 for players who hadn't played them before, but we're going to be playing Mass 3. And so one of our amazing QA crew, he put on an XLS just the major decisions, not all of them, just kind of the majors that we thought were the most important from Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2, and then just how those branch out into everything and what that looked like, so we could present it to Casey Hudson and Mac Walters to kind of say, what do you think we should include in this? And that Excel doc was like a work of art. Like, it was insane how many different branches there are and how many different ways your character can go, looking at that. So that scope, just looking at it on that doc, made me just realize how vast our games are.
We were wondering too, because when, like Kevin was saying, like the engines have changed, they have developed, they've upgraded. Was there anything when you were originally looking at doing the remaster where it just wasn't quite possible in the first game, and you were like, this would be great. We can actually do it now. And maybe I'll throw that to Kevin.
Yeah, I think, obviously with time and with the engine update, we're just largely let loose of our shackles of performance considerations. I say largely, but GPUs are obviously way more powerful. In some ways, the CPU is still, if we were limited then, we're still a little bit limited now. CPUs have gotten a little bit, they have more threads, but each thread's not necessarily more powerful. But it's really nice to be able to take tech from the third one, things like dynamic God rays, or just being allowed to use more reflection actors, which we're not using like ray tracing reflections or anything like that. We're just able to kind of utilize our old tech, which is this forward rendering path, and we're able to just actually place more cameras around the level that just basically act as a mirror. They're just rendering out back at you, and you're able to get reflective surfaces on there. And that's very old tech, but at the time you could not afford to render the scene twice or three times or four times or whatever we're doing now. So that really allows us to kind of get more modern visuals while using kind of the old tech. And it's that approach where, like, is there something that we can do with this that takes us 80% of the way to a modern game? And that last 20% is icing on the cake, but like that 80% is what makes it feel like a modern experience. So things like, yeah, just the resolution, HDR, and then post effects really coming in over top of everything as well. Each one of those is, they take milliseconds of rendering time, but back in the day you didn't have those milliseconds, right? So now we can spend 2 milliseconds on every frame for ambient occlusion and a better looking depth of field, and really make that cinematic experience come together. And there's just opportunities that weren't allowed for in the original release.
For sure. And I think we even see that the big announcement of there's less waiting time in the elevators. So even those little things that are just
Yeah.
exciting. And
SSDs are a game changer for sure in those
oh,
ways.
for sure. And what I really want to know though is, because you're all obviously very passionate and fans of the series, now that it's released, like Legendary Edition is out as of 2 days ago, what do you really hope that players will experience with the remaster? Is it the full experience, or is it something else a little bit different? And maybe we'll start with Melanie, having worked on number 3.
I think for me, I hope that players who played the original trilogy and really loved it, that Legendary Edition kind of has that same, it makes it feel like you're playing it again for the first time. It's so hard to find a game that you love so much, and that kind of consumes your own world a little bit. And that magic of playing those games for the first time and being like, yes, this is one of those games. I hope that playing Legendary Edition brings that feeling back.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a special feeling to have. And what about you, Crystal?
I think that, one of the interesting things about making the Legendary Edition is that the Mass Effect trilogy is well loved, right? So how do you bring such a beloved, game into this generation without changing all the things that we love, right? And so we've really tried to make sure that we're balancing that line and making sure that the game is still the game that fans love. We want it to continue to be that game that you remember, and we just brought it into this generation. But we also want to make sure that we're giving you what you want as a new player in this generation. What are you expecting? And so I think that we've done well at kind of keeping the balance in between there. It's a fine line of keeping the game that we love, and then also bringing it into this generation for new players.
For sure. And how about you, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. Along the same lines, it's the biggest kind of tent pole that we've had, and kind of guiding light, is to keep everything true to the original soul and the intent and the feel of all the places and the characters. And with the remaster, right, it's the same file that was already there on disk, and we've just polished it up a handful of iterations beyond that, but you're not starting from something different. And the soul and the feeling of the games, and the first time you land on the Presidium and you're walking around, or as you kind of run into some of these like really difficult decisions, I think, people who are playing this for the very first time and people who are playing this again, 15 years in between, they'll be able to go in there and like, they should be able to have a conversation, honestly. If you haven't played this game for 15 years and you talk to someone who is playing the Legendary Edition for the first time, they should be able to talk to each other as if it's the same game, right? Except, of course, if you played this game 15 years ago, you have all these fond memories. You probably have all the sense of nostalgia, and all the bugs have kind of faded from your brain. And the person who's playing the Legendary Edition actually probably gets to experience that. With a lot fewer bugs, and actually looking like how you remembered it was supposed to be. So I hope we've brought that kind of sense of worthwhile upgrade. You can sit now on your couch with your 4K HDR TV, with your console at Gen 5 stuff, 60 FPS, and really experience this with like smoother controls, smoother combat, a lot of the bugs fixed, and just not be distracted by all these things that would have stopped you from being able to just replay this on your own free will if you had old copies of the game.
Yeah, and one thing that we did see was that there's added detail. So to some of these worlds that we were like, this is beautiful and amazing, now it's even more beautiful and amazing. So I think even though, if you played it 15 years ago, maybe there's something new for people to see as well.
Oh yeah, we definitely, especially in ME1, but through the whole trilogy, um, it shouldn't ever distract you or grab your attention. But what we've really tried to do is just made these places feel more alive, really grab, what was the original narrative, the intent of these levels, and what can we do to push that along.
Amazing. So I want to ask you my fun question, because I was very excited when I played Mass Effect 2, and just the little things that people sneak in there. And I saw prison inmate 780 and 403. And it kind of rings some bells, for somebody from Edmonton or from Alberta in general. We were like, I wonder why that's in there. And so I was just wondering, if any of you have a favorite Easter egg, or if we have something that kind of relates back to Edmonton or to Alberta, or if something that you can share with us. And maybe we'll start with Melanie, because I saw the little smirk there.
I don't know. I don't know if it counts as an Easter egg, because I just love, one of the things I love is just all the little details that we do have. And so for me, I think it would just it's a space hamster in ME3. Like I just love that little detail. But yeah, I don't know if you guys probably have Easter eggs too.
I think that's a good one. I would go with that. It can count. It's cute. And how about you, Crystal? Is there anything coming as a fan that you were like, I loved this part?
What I loved is that, in talking with Kevin and development, there are certain memes that have come out of the original trilogy that we literally had conversations of like, oh, people love this meme. Like, should we remove it? It's, so there are perhaps, I'm not going to spoil which ones, but a few possible memes in the Legendary Edition that we may have left in just so that you can still enjoy them.
I think that's the best news we've ever heard. It's a beloved game, right? So there's always going to be those points that people always pick up on. But how about you, Kevin? Because you were also a fan of the franchise before joining on this team. Is there something that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moments. I think there's a lot of narrative Easter eggs, especially in the trilogy. So like you have these conversations of quoting Star Wars and Doctor Who, and there's a whole scene in the I think it's the Citadel DLC in ME3, where it's just like completely taken off of the two thugs from the cantina of Star Wars uh, New Hope. But I think, and I haven't tested this, but I've heard about it and I love it. Probably my favorite Easter egg is actually outside of the game, and that's if you own like an Amazon Echo, you should go try and like ask it Legion's line of I think does this unit have a soul? It's something like that. And then the Amazon Echo apparently responds back Tally's line, which is like kill us a lie or like yes or whatever. So I think that that's really cool when it's Mass Effect's really kind of it's penetrated and it's expanded beyond itself, right? So now you're getting Easter eggs everywhere else, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's so fun. I never even thought of doing that. Whenever anybody's like, "Oh, you should ask the smart devices these things," I never think about it. But, as Edmontonians, we're so spoiled by having Mass Effect in our daily lives that I think sometimes we forget this is a global phenomenon. Like, people love this game so much. So I didn't even think to ask my smart device. Now we're going to have a conversation. But no, I think that's absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited to have had this opportunity to chat with you all and to talk about Mass Effect Legendary, because it is such a big accomplishment, and we're so excited that people get to play it and that it's out and it's ready, and people actually get to experience making their own Commander Shepard and going through that experience. So if there's any last words that you wanted to share with anybody, if they're looking forward to Mass Effect Legendary, what would that be? And maybe I'll just say whoever's the most excited can go first.
Everyone, we're all so excited. Yeah, we're really excited to get this out there and into people's hands. We've been playing it for a long time now, and just excited to see what people think. And thank you to the fans for being such supporters of the series. And that's why we make games, right? It's because of those fans. So thank you to everyone.
I think that's right on it, Crystal. Like, just, yeah, thank you for loving the franchise, and I hope you love the Legendary Edition as much as we do.
Yeah, I mean, and it did come from the fans, right? There's been so much pressure over so many years. When are they going to remaster Mass Effect? When are they going to remaster Mass Effect? And we've been talking about it internally for years as well. And it finally lined up. And if there wasn't that, fan support pushing us along from the outside, as well as us pushing on the inside, who knows? It might not have all lined up so perfectly. So, we're excited to get that out here finally. Get your hands on it and experience the upgrades. And just like the feeling again of Mass Effect, or if you missed out on it because it's an M-rated game, there's a whole generation of people, like you might be 30 something right now and had to miss out on the very first game because of age restrictions, and once you miss out on that first game, maybe you skip the rest. So I'm really excited personally for the people who have never been able to go in there before. Like the barrier was too high to jump through, and this will give you a good opportunity.
Awesome. Well, I do want to thank you three again. We've learned so much about this amazing game and series. And if people want to know more information, they can obviously check out BioWare's info, as well as they can pick it up. It's available. You can get it on all the things. So definitely make sure to check that out, as well as Mass Effect has their own Twitter, which is also fun. So I would recommend following that as well, because there's a lot of fun fan art and other things that get shared. So just want to thank you three again. This has been amazing, and we can't wait for everybody to play it.